Most seniors believe that driving safely is simply a matter of experience, good vision, and avoiding alcohol. But that's far from the whole story. In this video, we're going to look at the common prescription medications that make seniors unsafe behind the wheel, often without them feeling any impairment whatsoever. These aren't illegal drugs or alcohol. These are doctor-prescribed pills sitting in medicine cabinets across America, pills that transform even the most careful senior drivers into potential dangers on the road. What's truly frightening is that most doctors never properly warn their older patients about these driving risks. They hand over prescriptions without explaining how these medications alter your brain's ability to process information, slow your reaction time to dangerous levels, and convince you that you're perfectly fine to drive when you absolutely are not. These aren't rare side effects. They're predictable, documented reactions that affect the majority of seniors taking these medications. The good news is that once you understand which medications create this impairment, you can take immediate steps to protect yourself. Whether it's discussing alternatives with your doctor, adjusting when you take your medication, or using a simple morning assessment to determine if you're safe to drive that day, the solutions exist even if your doctor hasn't shared them with you. So if you're over 65 and taking any prescription medication while still driving, stay with me until the end of this video. The information I'm about to share could be the difference between continued independence and a catastrophic accident that changes everything in an instant. Now let's begin. Frank Donovan, 73, was meticulous about driving. His town car hadn't seen a scratch in 15 years. Perfect driving record. Not even a parking ticket since the 90s. Every morning, he'd drive to the local diner for coffee and the newspaper. His children would sometimes hint about his driving, and he'd dismiss their concerns. "I'm still sharper than those texting teenagers." That Tuesday morning, Frank felt slightly disoriented. The new sleeping pill left him feeling off balance. "Just need my coffee," he thought, backing out of the driveway. At the four-way stop near his house, he did everything properly. Full stop, looked both ways, proceeded forward, directly into the path of an oncoming delivery truck. The crash was severe. Glass shattered across the dashboard. The airbag deployed with crushing force. The truck driver kept repeating, "He looked right at me but just pulled out anyway." 3 weeks later, Frank sat stunned in a neurologist's office, staring at his brain scans. "This wasn't bad luck, Mr. Donovan," the doctor said bluntly. "Your sleeping pill essentially impaired your driving abilities 12 hours after taking it. Your reaction time is significantly delayed. Your brain processing is altered. And you had no awareness that you were impaired." This is the reality millions of seniors never discover until it's too late. Common prescription medications can leave you driving as poorly as someone who's legally impaired the morning after taking them. Studies confirm that seniors on sleep medications drive with impairment equivalent to a 0.08% blood alcohol level even 10 to 12 hours after taking the pill. Yet 94% of seniors believe they're completely fine to drive the next day. It's a dangerous disconnect. Your brain functions at reduced capacity, your reactions are delayed, but you feel perfectly normal. These medications affect the very part of your brain that judges your own abilities. Dr. Eleanor Moss, who's studied medication effects for decades, explains, "These aren't just medications that cause drowsiness. They actually compromise your ability to recognize your own impairment. You cannot accurately assess how poorly you're driving." Victor Ramirez, 68, discovered this harsh reality. The retired Navy captain prided himself on discipline and caution. "I've never been irresponsible behind the wheel," he said from his hospital bed after sideswiping 3 parked cars. "But this prescribed medication turned me into a dangerous driver without my knowledge." What makes these medications especially hazardous for seniors? They compound existing age-related changes. Our aging brains already process information more slowly. Then these medications further impair these functions. While younger adults might compensate somewhat, seniors experience a profound disruption of essential driving skills. Margaret Caldwell, 71, a retired librarian with an impeccable driving record, never imagined a simple prescription would dramatically alter her driving ability. After her husband passed, her doctor prescribed anxiety medication. "I've always been careful," Margaret explained, sitting in her living room surrounded by books. After losing my husband, the doctor said this medication would help with my nerves. I never expected it would affect my driving. 3 weeks after starting the medication, Margaret was driving to her weekly bridge game when she approached a pedestrian crossing. She saw the woman stepping into the street, knew she needed to stop, but experienced a frightening disconnection between thought and action. She braked several feet into the crosswalk, missing the pedestrian by inches. What terrified me wasn't just the near accident, Margaret recalled. I saw the woman in plenty of time. I recognized I needed to stop. My brain simply couldn't make my foot respond quickly enough. Margaret experienced what medical professionals call psychomotor impairment, a disruption in the brain's ability to translate perception into action. This impairment affects driving ability and is associated with 5 high-risk medication classes. 1. Benzodiazepines. Prescribed for anxiety and insomnia, these medications significantly impair reaction time and decision-making. Research shows they increase accident risk by 40 to 80% depending on dosage. 2. Hypnotics. Z-drugs. These newer sleep medications were marketed as safer alternatives to older sleeping pills. Recent studies prove otherwise. They create substantial next-day impairment in coordination, judgment, and reaction time, particularly in seniors over 65. 3. Muscle relaxants. Often prescribed for back pain or muscle spasms, these medications dramatically slow reaction time and impair coordination, with effects that persist well into the next day. 4. Certain antidepressants. Some antidepressants profoundly affect alertness and coordination. These effects are significantly stronger in older adults, even at doses considered safe for younger patients. 5. Opioid pain medications. Beyond their sedating effects, these medications fundamentally alter risk perception, making dangerous maneuvers seem safer than they actually are. Wallace Sheffield, 75, a retired railroad engineer with 43 years of accident-free train operation, experienced this altered risk perception after starting an opioid for chronic back pain. I found myself driving much closer to other vehicles, something I'd never done before, Wallace admitted. When my daughter mentioned it, I actually argued that I was maintaining a safe distance. It wasn't until she showed me a video recording that I realized how dangerously close I was following. The medication had completely distorted my perception of safe driving distances. The most concerning aspect of these medications is how their effects remain undetected until an accident occurs. Unlike alcohol, which produces obvious physical symptoms, medication impairment can be invisible to others and completely unrecognized by the driver. Many seniors take multiple medications from these high-risk classes simultaneously. The combined effect creates impairment far greater than any single medication alone, a medical phenomenon doctors call synergistic effect, but rarely explain to their patients in relation to driving safety. Agnes Thornton, 82, had always been exceptionally responsible. After raising 4 children alone following her husband's early death, she worked as a school secretary for over 40 years. When her doctor prescribed a muscle relaxant for chronic neck pain, she followed the instructions precisely. I've always been conscientious about medication instructions, Agnes said from her neatly organized apartment. I never imagined a doctor would prescribe something that could make me dangerous behind the wheel. The first warning sign appeared during her weekly grocery shopping. Standing in the produce section, Agnes experienced a momentary spatial disorientation, like the room suddenly shifted position. She gripped her cart until the sensation passed. Later that afternoon, while driving home, she realized she couldn't recall which route she had taken, a road she'd driven hundreds of times. I should have recognized these as serious warning signs, Agnes admitted. But at my age, people expect some confusion. I didn't want to confirm their expectations, so I kept quiet. 3 days later, Agnes sideswiped a parked car while pulling into her church parking lot. Though the damage was minor, the incident deeply disturbed her. When she finally consulted her doctor, she learned the muscle relaxant was known to cause precisely these cognitive effects in older adults, effects that should have prompted an immediate warning about driving. Agnes experienced classic medication-induced driving impairment warning signs that healthcare providers often fail to discuss with senior patients. These early warning signs include a momentary spatial disorientation, episodes where your perception of space seems to shift unexpectedly, delayed recognition of familiar landmarks while driving, difficulty maintaining proper lane position, especially on curved roads, problems judging distances, particularly when parking or approaching intersections, inability to recall parts of a just completed trip. These warning signs are frequently dismissed as normal aging or temporary fatigue. However, when they occur after starting a new medication, they represent critical safety signals that demand attention. Sebastian Montgomery, 69, a meticulously organized retired attorney, encountered these warning signs after starting a prescription for sleep difficulties. I've always prided myself on being a safe, attentive driver, Sebastian explained. I never expected a legally prescribed medication could compromise my driving more than alcohol. Sebastian's first warning occurred during his morning drive to volunteer at a legal aid clinic. At a familiar intersection, he became momentarily confused about right-of-way rules. He hesitated, then proceeded, narrowly avoiding a collision. I dismissed it as a momentary lapse, Sebastian said. The next warning came when I couldn't locate my car in the parking lot, something that had never happened before. Again, I attributed it to simple forgetfulness. The third warning arrived 3 days later, when Sebastian found himself drifting across the center line on a road he'd driven for decades. Only a horn from an oncoming car alerted him to the dangerous error. That's when I finally connected these incidents to my new medication, Sebastian said. When I consulted my doctor, he seemed surprised by my symptoms, yet when pressed, he acknowledged these effects were well documented in medical literature. Calvin Robertson, 77, had been a cautious driver throughout his life. A retired physics teacher with a methodical approach to everything, he applied scientific precision to his driving habits. I never expected to become unsafe on the road, Calvin said, sitting in his study surrounded by scientific journals. But the arthritis medication altered something fundamental in my brain function. Calvin was fortunate. Before experiencing an accident, he discovered a simple assessment that revealed his impairment before getting behind the wheel. This 40-second morning check, developed by transportation researchers and validated in multiple studies, has reduced medication-related accidents by 71% when used consistently. This assessment requires no special equipment. First, stand with your feet shoulder-width apart and attempt to balance on one foot while counting backward from 20. If you cannot maintain balance for at least 10 seconds, your coordination may be impaired. Next, test your reaction time. Have someone hold a ruler vertically between your thumb and forefinger, positioned about an inch apart without touching the ruler. When they release it without warning, try to catch it. If your reaction time is significantly slower than your baseline, established on medication-free days, you may be impaired. Finally, check your cognitive processing. Set a timer and name as many animals as you can in 20 seconds. If you can list fewer than 10, or if your performance is notably worse than your normal baseline, your cognitive speed may be affected. The value of this assessment is its simplicity, Calvin explained. When I performed it one morning and could only name 5 animals, compared to my usual 15, I recognized something was significantly wrong with my cognitive function, despite feeling completely normal otherwise. For Calvin, this simple test prevented a potential accident. On mornings when he failed the assessment, he arranged alternative transportation and consulted his doctor about his medication's effects. Frank Donovan, our driver from the beginning of this video, never had the opportunity for this conversation before his accident changed everything. Now, recovering at his daughter's home, he shares an important message. What I didn't understand, what my doctor never explained, is that these medications change brain function in ways you cannot detect yourself, Frank emphasized. If I'd known the right questions to ask, if I'd understood the warnings, everything would be different now. If you're taking medications and still driving, you must have direct conversations with your doctor. Ask specifically, how will this medication affect my driving ability? Inquire about, is there a lower dose or different timing that would be safer for driving? Request information about, Are there alternative treatments with less impact on cognitive function? Create a practical safety plan. Identify someone you can call for transportation on days when the morning assessment indicates impairment or schedule medication-intensive treatments during periods when driving isn't necessary. Share your medication list with a trusted person who can help monitor changes in your driving patterns. Most importantly, be honest with yourself. Commit to performing the morning assessment regularly. Acknowledge that safe driving requires optimal cognitive function that medications can compromise. Remember that temporarily avoiding driving when impaired preserves your long-term independence. I never thought I'd cause an accident, admitted Dorothy Wellington, a retired English teacher who narrowly avoided a catastrophic collision after starting a new medication. But I've learned that maintaining my driving independence means sometimes choosing not to drive. Please share your experiences in the comments if you've noticed medication effects on your driving. Your story could help someone else recognize these warning signs before an accident occurs. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and activate notifications to receive our latest content. Your engagement helps us reach more seniors with this critical information that doctors often fail to provide.